review of Book 101 is about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's a chartered accountant, educator, as well as a mindset coach, none other than Miss Yvonne Starkey.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fabulous, fabulous Miss Yvonne. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to it. So I am a chartered accountant, as you mentioned, and I lecture auditing at postgraduate and undergraduate levels for students who are looking to qualify as professional accountants. And over the last 10, 11 years, I've actually moved out of lecturing to focusing on mindset and strategy coaching for accountants and or for accounting, predominantly accounting students at higher levels. And I'm also working on research, mindset, how mindset affects accounting students and the accounting education profession. So I'm very focused on mindset and also a chartered accountant, which sort of seems a little bit of an interesting overlap.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Miss Yvonne. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today let's talk about why smart students still struggle, the hidden side of performance. So tell us, while cost savings are the major draw, what is the promises of being lack of focus to be, let's say, smart student but still struggling?
Yeah. So I think it's something that people don't necessarily think about, and especially at higher levels. So if you're smart at school, you've got such great potential, you're doing so well, the results are amazing. You go on to university or even higher levels, postgraduate. I work with postgraduate students. I work with PhD students. I work with people who are publishing. I work with professors, and so these are really verifiably smart people, but
Mm-hmm.
they're struggling. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're struggling uh, in terms of passing exams because they've passed. You know, they've passed a lot of exams, they've passed a lot of levels. So what is going on? Most of my work is based on Carol Dweck's work on mindset, growth, and fixed mindsets, which I think people possibly underestimate, you know, the depth of. And I think really, really simply put, a lot of smart students, a lot of people who are used to being labeled as smart, especially from school, one of the things they struggle with is the idea that things may go wrong, or you may find areas and topics of studying that go a little slower. You start struggling. Things don't come as easily. It's not as easy to learn. You don't get things right as fast. And then you think something has gone wrong. I'm not so smart anymore. Why is this happening? If you're very used to getting things right easily, and your early learning journey, you know, at school and that type of thing, was an experience of I learn something, I get it right, I learn another thing, I get it right. You may work very, very hard, but you get things right. And so you believe that your intelligence is based on your ability to get things right. So naturally, when things start going wrong, when it takes longer to learn something, when you're failing a test, when you come across something that doesn't make sense to you, it's very natural and understandable that you would start thinking, oh my goodness, something has gone wrong. I can't possibly be smart if I'm getting things wrong. You know, if smart is right,
Hmm.
then wrong must be stupid. You know, and so the impact of that, the impact
Okay.
of that is they back off. In a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cases, they back off. You know, they disengage. They don't ask for help. They change career paths. Maybe they just, you know, they deregister, or they lose themselves in anxiety and stress. But yeah, so they still struggle. But the underlying idea is that they believe that smart equals right, and so if you're not getting stuff right, then
Mm-hmm. So, Miss Yvonne, how does the very label of being smart or gifted become a psychological trap, creating a fear of failure that ultimately paralyzes a student?
Yeah. So the fascinating thing about growth and fixed mindsets is that the research actually started with learned helplessness. And I think a lot of people are kind of aware of learned helplessness, the idea that you can teach someone or someone can learn that they can't do something, even if they can.
Hmm.
And so that's where mindset research started. And their question was, why do some people respond this way? Why do some people respond to challenges by being helpless and then actually getting worse, not being able to do things they used to be able to do? And they worked it backwards. And what they found is that some people develop a very implicit and a very unconscious belief about how the world works. And to a large extent, our beliefs are developed when we're very young, based on the feedback that we get from the world around us, based on what the world is prioritizing. And when we're very young, and when we're doing well at school, for example, it's the most natural thing in the world for people to tell us we're smart. Wow, you're so smart. You got that right so quickly. Your results are so great. And so you develop a belief on the basis of the feedback the world is giving you. And those beliefs are that it's very important to be smart because that's what I get praised for. It's very important to be smart all the time because let's say your marks drop a little bit. You're in high
Hmm.
school and something goes wrong, you lose focus, your marks drop a little bit. What's the first thing that your parents and teachers say? What's gone wrong? What happened this semester? What's gone wrong? So the immediate feedback when you drop below great results is something's gone wrong, which further embeds that idea that right is good and wrong is bad. And so I must never get things wrong. I must never drop. I must never decrease my performance. And it's a label as opposed to a journey. So I must always get things right first time around. And you compare this to someone who doesn't get things right easily. The students in class that are always asking questions, I don't understand, I have to struggle with it, I have to work on it. The feedback that they're getting from the world and from teachers and parents who want to encourage them, the feedback that they're getting is obviously not, wow, you're so smart, because there aren't results to back that up. The feedback they're getting is, it's so important that you keep trying. It's so important that you kept going. And when they do eventually get it right, the feedback and the praise they get is for the effort. Oh, well done. You kept going, you kept doing this, you carried on. And so the feedback they get is that the world values effort and the world values the journey. It doesn't matter what I'm capable of doing today because tomorrow I can change. It doesn't matter what I'm struggling with today because I'll go get help, I'll do something else. Because the feedback is what's creating their underlying belief. And so the danger of labeling someone with something static, you are smart, is a binary label. You either are smart or you are not smart. And so if you're not getting good results, then you can't be smart. And this is a very bad thing because everybody is focusing on your results. Whereas the other person is getting the feedback of effort, which is a journey. It's not a binary issue. And so the danger of calling people smart, of calling your kids smart, oh, you're so smart, you've got such great results, you get things right so quickly, is you're embedding that belief that I must always do that. And when I'm not doing that, obviously my intelligence has disappeared and I'm not as valuable anymore. I'm not as capable. I should be ashamed. Instead of working harder and going at it further, maybe I should just back off and not do anything now.
Miss Yvonne, many smart students are adept at schooling, jumping through hoops, but struggles with deep, meaningful learning. How can we tell the difference and why is the latter so much harder for them?
I think society and the world is set up to celebrate quick wins. We can't get away from that. So I think it's incredibly difficult in the school environment where the exams, the tests are all designed to celebrate performance. You must do well, you have to pass. In all honesty, very few academic environments are set up to celebrate the learning process. The only thing valuable about the learning process is whether you can pass the exam at the end. And so I think the challenge is that parents and teachers around kids and around people as they're developing their beliefs need to really spend their time focusing on the journey and be really careful about the message that you're sending, about what performance means. And one of the things that I would recommend if you are a parent and or you are a teacher or whatever, is to take students that are gifted, take students that do very well, and make them do a hobby or a sport that they struggle with. Because they have to have that experience. So what
Hmm.
I find with people I work with, like at postgraduate levels, when I go back and I say, talk to me about how your school went, they went through a whole bunch of hobbies and sports very quickly, because they would start a sport and then they would realize they don't really have an innate talent for it, and then they would back off and they'd go, well, I'm not good at it. I clearly don't have the talent to play tennis, so I'm not going to. And then they would go try basketball, and then they would go try hockey, and then they would go try this. And so they have a trend throughout their life of things that they started, they realized they didn't have innate talent, and then they stopped. As opposed to saying, well, I've just started this. I've never done this before. I may not have talent now, but I'm going to improve. And so that learning process of saying you need to find something that you're not great at, and something that will teach you the value of incremental learning, teach you the value and teach you that talent isn't everything, and that you can start something at zero, struggle with it, and make improvements. And that changes the way that you understand how the world works. So it may not be school, the environment. We can't change what your assignments are. We can't change what your assessments are. But what we can do is put you in a position where you are gaining the experience and the understanding of what it's like to struggle with something and then overcome it.
When does a student's identity become so tied to being the smart one that they would rather not to try and risk being seen as an average?
I think it depends on the culture, it depends on their goals, and
Hmm.
it depends on when they start struggling. So a lot of mindset research, or a lot of research suggests that this happens in high school, that identity is set in high school. But in my experience with the types of people that I work with, who are very highly qualified and very highly educated, they only started really struggling probably towards the end of their degree. And most students that I deal with, they actually only started struggling in their postgraduate degree. So everything was fairly smooth. I mean, they worked hard. It's not like they didn't work. They worked hard, but they didn't struggle. And so they kept, right up to the end of their degree, they're developing this identity, and the world is telling them. And especially if you're looking at a professional qualification, the world is telling you, you have to be smart to be a qualified accountant. It's the smart people who qualify. It's the smart. You're around a bunch of people who are studying a smart qualification. You're around a bunch of people who are telling you that you have to be smart. You've got to be part of it. And so you get even older and older and older, and this develop. This belief is developed, and then you hit. In, as I say, in a lot of cases, my students hit the later part of their degree or their postgraduate level, and their world falls apart, and they don't realize that they've developed so much of their identity around being smart and understanding, or the belief that the world is watching. And now that I'm in a professional qualification, and the same applies to medical students, to law students, other students in the STEM, the sciences, is you're in a very small community of people all doing the same thing, working to the same. And so it's very natural that your entire environment feeds your identity of how important it is to be smart. And I would rather disappear than be seen as stupid. I would rather back off and go, you know what, this wasn't for me. I've changed my mind. I don't actually want to be a doctor after all. Don't actually want this after all. That doesn't leave you feeling and looking stupid. So you would rather just back off and go, you know what, it's fine. I never wanted to be a doctor anyway. It's all right, because that way I still look smart, but I've backed off.
Miss Yvonne, on the hidden psychological barriers, how does perfectionism manifest not as a desire to excel, but is crippling fear of making
Yeah.
mistakes?
Yeah, perfectionism is a fascinating topic. And I'm going to call it definition, if you will. The best
Mm-hmm.
definition of perfectionism that I've ever come across is from Brene Brown, and she does a lot of research in vulnerability and that. And her discussion around perfectionism is the desire to look perfect, be perfect, act perfect, to reduce or eliminate criticism, shame, blame, and failure. And I love that because that's what perfectionism is. Perfectionism is not actually about striving for success or striving for excellence. It's not. Perfectionists and perfectionism is actually about I have to be perfect. And if I am perfect, if I do everything properly, then no one can criticize me. I'll never fail and no one can criticize me. So why wouldn't that be striving for success? Let's take a look at what excellence should look like, right? Excellence should look like a goal that you set for yourself and you say, what does it take to reach that goal? It's a very challenging goal. What does it take to reach that goal? Well, if you've set a very challenging goal, it's going to take time and things are going to go wrong. We're not in control of everything. And we know, if you have a 10-year qualification level, if you have a 5-year qualification path, not everything is going to go right. Not everything is going according to plan. So what does it take for me to achieve that goal? And all the decisions and all the events and all the things that go right and wrong along the way are measured by what do I need to do the job? And so when I start struggling, when something becomes more challenging, when something goes wrong, I should be asking myself, how do I fix this? Or what do I do in order to reach my goal? But a perfectionist won't think like that. A perfectionist isn't focusing on what do I need to do to reach the goal. The perfectionism is focusing on what do I need to do to not fail? What do I need to do to not be criticized? And so they're more likely to hide away. They're more likely to procrastinate. They're more likely to miss deadlines. They're more likely to analyze before they actually act. They don't make progress because they're so busy trying to make sure that everything is perfect that they don't build, they don't learn, they struggle to get started. They call it analysis paralysis. They struggle to get started because they're so busy trying to make the perfect plan to make sure that everything will be successful that they don't realize you've got to get started somewhere and things are going to go right and wrong. So the difference between someone who strives for excellence is that they're prepared to do what it takes. They're prepared to get help. They realize that it's valuable to get criticism, to get critique, to get feedback from people to go, you know what, you could improve that. Or know what, that could go faster. That could change. You're struggling there. Let's fix that. That is the way we get to excellence. But a perfectionist will hide away from that. A perfectionist will avoid that because I don't want people to think I'm stupid. And so perfectionism and people who are perfectionists struggle with very high levels of anxiety. They procrastinate a lot. They generally miss deadlines. They spend a lot of time in the planning phase of their projects and delay starting projects until they feel it's perfect. And when things start going wrong, their focus is on how do I save face and how do I continue to look and feel smart, as opposed to what does this going to take, even if it's uncomfortable, what is this going to take to achieve the objective?
Miss Yvonne, as a chartered accountant, educator, and mindset coach, what are your short term and long term goals?
I want to change the world, man.
Let's do it.
I think, yeah, it's a good question. I think my long-term goal is to reach as many of these types of students, students who are at higher levels, professional qualifications, medical law, especially accounting, and say to them, focus on understanding your beliefs and changing your beliefs, because the reason that you're struggling at these higher levels has nothing to do with your intelligence. The reason that you're failing or the reason that you're struggling is not about your intelligence. It's about the way that you respond to challenges. And the work that I do with students is incredibly successful because I talk to them about their beliefs and it shifts the way that they respond and what they do on a daily basis. And if that's the difference between success and failure, I mean, that's amazing. So my research is intended to take this conversation to academics. I want to take this conversation to academic institutions and talk to them about why their students are failing at higher levels. Because the industry, the accounting industry, doesn't understand. Why is there a 50% pass rate at your CPA exam? what you had to do to get into it. You had to be smart. And now only 5 out of 10 people can pass. What's going wrong? I want to talk to them and go, I think that there's a good possibility that a large portion of the guys that are failing are struggling with this.
Interesting, Miss Yvonne, and looking forward for more success. And good
I
luck to
hope
your
so.
goal for the
Thank you
world
so much.
domination. World domination.
Yeah,
Indeed.
I like it.
Let's do that. World domination. We should have a podcast called World Domination.
Take
Would you
over the world.
interest World Domination 101? Would you like to have a podcast like that?
Well, I think that's dangerous. I think that's a little dangerous. Yeah.
Dangerous. Okay. So, what would your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Be prepared to fail. Be prepared to
Yes.
fail and ask
Hmm.
yourself, what would my day look like? What would this challenge look like if I wasn't afraid that people are going to think that I'm not smart? What would this look like if I was genuinely focusing on what the goal required and I wasn't so worried about what people thought about me? It's probably the
Hmm.
easiest thing to do on a daily basis.
Yes. Most smart people don't like to fail.
Yeah.
To
Yeah, we don't want to
fail.
look stupid. Yeah, I don't want to look stupid. I
Yes,
want people to think I'm stupid. Yeah.
definitely. And thank you for that advice, Miss Yvonne. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yeah, obviously, Carol Dweck's mindset book is probably the most valuable. That it's what I base all my work on, and I go back to the research. So, Carol Dweck's book Mindset, I think, is probably a must read, definitely for parents, and especially for parents who have very smart kids. And
Yes.
for students, especially for students who are doing well, students who are doing well at university, students who are on professional qualification paths, you need to give that a read.
Yes. Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Yvonne. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And what the single most important shift a parent of a struggling smart student can make in their own behavior and communication to become a source of support rather than a pressure?
I think the biggest change probably is is realizing that we can change and that whatever things look now, it doesn't have to stay that way. It doesn't, whatever mess and whatever the failure and whatever the challenge and whatever the setback looks like today, we can come back tomorrow and improve. We can get help, we can change, we can fix, we can, whatever it looks like today, this may be where you are, but it doesn't mean that this is where you end.
Yes, definitely. And what can a teacher or professor do in their classroom to identify and support the hidden struggle who mask their difficulties with intelligence?
Yeah. I think the research has proven that a teacher that constantly focuses on and talks about improvement and learning as the important thing and the journey of learning as an important thing, and in the moments where you're doing things in class, to keep talking about not the result of how did you do on the class test, or is your answer right or wrong, but to talk about the process of thinking and to continuously focus on, it doesn't matter where you are now, it's effort that counts, and to deprioritize the impact or deprioritize the focus on the result and the label of smart. I think is, it's research has proven that something that small, if you will, but a continual messaging of effort over result, I think is, has been proven to be very effective.
Miss Yvonne, can you share a story of a specific student who embodied this hidden struggle? What was the key insight or strategy that finally allowed them to unlock their performance?
This is something that I do every day. So it's not one student, it's hundreds of students. So that, they're like, and it's all the same. So I like,
Hmm.
there's 100 students that I've worked with at that, at this level. Um, and I talk about it as, I say their studying was great, let's say up until the end of their degree, and then they hit postgraduate level and something changed. And we talk about it as they feel like their studying has broken. What used to work doesn't work anymore. And as hard as they're working, it's not working. And by talking to them about what they believe about their intelligence, and by talking to them about what they've learned and where they are, and the fact that there's so much strength in the ability to overcome challenge, the starting point of that awareness that your daily struggles and your daily habits are built on your beliefs. Of course, it makes sense that you're going to avoid exams. Of course, it makes sense that you're going to have anxiety about exams because you're more worried about looking smart than you are about learning. If you were really interested in this qualification, if you're really interested in learning, you would be focusing on, what do I need to do now? And your starting point is, okay, I'm struggling with this. Do I get help? Do I spend more time? And so, just the starting point of talking about where your beliefs come from and where you are is incredibly valuable. And I cannot tell you how many students say to me, Yvonne, it's like you're in my head. It's like you're speaking to me. It's like you've got a camera at my desk when I'm studying. How do you know that's exactly what I'm feeling? So being able to mirror their biggest fears and their biggest worries and then talk about where they come from starts the process of saying, okay, now tomorrow, when you start studying, I need you to remind yourself that your process here is, I'm going to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. I'm going to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. And so you, to some extent, you're reprogramming the way your brain works.
Hmm.
You're reprogramming that messaging from I can't to I can't yet. I
I
can't
can't
to I
yet.
can't yet. Yeah, incredibly valuable. It feels like a very small thing, but the starting point has to be the awareness of where your current behavior and where your beliefs and where your fears are coming from.
Yes, I always do that too, Miss Yvonne. I'll be better in every
Yeah,
episode that I will
yeah,
doing.
yeah,
See, that'd be awesome. Because I don't want, as you said, I don't want to fail in every episode that
yeah.
I'm doing. I'm not afraid to commit mistakes, but
There you go. Yeah,
because you will
yeah,
learn from them. Yeah, mistakes will make you better in the future,
yeah,
in the process.
yeah. If you're
So
so afraid of
yeah,
mistakes, you won't get started.
mistakes. Yes,
you,
definitely.
you really won't start.
Comparing to my first episodes
Mm.
on my first season, for sure I have a lot of mistakes, and I told to myself, I'll be better. I'll
Yeah,
be better
yeah,
for
yeah,
each episode. So that from now on, I'll be better of
yeah. And
each
look what you've
episode that
done.
I'm doing.
Look what you've built.
Yes,
Yeah, look what you've built. Amazing.
that's true. And before we wrap up our discussion today, Miss Yvonne, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, People, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in
Oh,
second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in fifth
ooh.
season as well.
I think I'm,
Geography
I'm going to start with the food. Yeah.
Please go come over. Geography 101, Love Letters, Movie 101, Review, Music 101, our fourth season, Science 101, Sex
Ooh.
101, in its second season, My Baby Podcast, Law 101, Mental Health 101,
Oh,
and
wow.
Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. And tune in for our podcast with Miss Yvonne. Domination World 101. Can
Let's
you
do it.
imagine world domination? So, Miss Yvonne, if you succeed in your mission, what is the new narrative that will replace why smart students still struggle?
Why smart students should struggle.
Yes. Thank you for
That's gonna be
correcting.
the easier.
Yes, true.
Yeah, that let's have that as the big phase.
Hmm.
Why smart students should
Still
struggle.
should struggle.
Yeah.
Yes. Why is it? What will be saying about student performance instead?
The journey is more important than the result. The journey is more important than the result.
Yes.
It's time we focused on that. With the world changing, you can pass the exams and the world is still going to kick you. You know? The world is changing so fast, the world changes, the adaptability, your ability to adapt and change and do different things. Podcasts didn't exist 15 years ago. You
True.
know, we didn't study to run podcasts, we didn't
Hmm.
train to do this. So, why are we doing it? Why are you successful at what you're doing? Is because you followed the journey, not the result.
True. Empowering answer. Miss Yvonne,
Awesome.
thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Thanks
And
for your
I
time.
and I hope our podcast will be materialized. Well, domination 101 or education 101.
Yeah. Education sounds better. Yeah.
Yes, education 101. Why not? So, Miss Yvonne, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your
Will do.
business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, I think I have a podcast called Future Accountants.
Hmm.
Let's change the future.
Yes, let's change the world as Miss Yvonne one of her advocacy. Yes, let's support Miss Yvonne Starkey because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy will rise. So, Miss Yvonne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
More people, see you soon.